By 1972, Richard Collins had lost everything. The $2.4 million fortune gone. The corner office at Granada Television gone. His reputation as the most powerful TV producer in Britain destroyed. And it all ended in 90 seconds, inside a California prison, when Johnny Cash put his hand on an $80,000 camera and said 5 words that would ruin a man's life. Either we move it, or I'll push it over myself. This is the story of how one of the most iconic photographs in music history was created, how a millionaire producer tried to control Johnny Cash, and how Johnny chose to protect a prisoner nobody cared about, even though it could have ended his career. What you're about to hear isn't just about a concert. It's about the moment when power met conscience, and only one of them survived. But before we get to that camera, you need to understand who Richard Collins was, because the bigger they are, the harder and more satisfying the fall. The 13th of January, 1968, Folsom State Prison, California. Richard Collins was 48 years old, wearing a 3-piece gray suit that cost more than most inmates made in a year. He'd been Granada Television's lead producer for 12 years, controlled a $1.2 million budget for this live recording, and had 15 cameramen waiting for his orders. Collins wasn't just some TV guy. He had 2,000 employees under him across 5 studios. Granada Television generated $50 million annually, and Collins personally approved every major production. His word could make or break careers. He'd controlled bigger stars than Johnny Cash. He'd directed the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and they'd all done exactly what he told them to do. Stand here, sing there, smile for camera 3. But Collins had a problem he didn't know about yet. Sitting in the 3rd row of that prison cafeteria was a man named Glenn Shirley, 31 years old, serving time for armed robbery. Hollow eyes, calloused hands from prison labor, a guitar he'd built himself from smuggled wood and wire. Glenn had written a song called Greystone Chapel about finding redemption inside those prison walls. Somehow, through a prison chaplain, the song had reached Johnny Cash 3 months earlier. Johnny had learned it by heart. He was going to surprise Glenn by performing it during the concert. Glenn didn't know this yet. He was just trying to see the stage, but Collins' camera crew kept blocking his view. And this is where Collins made his first mistake, because he saw prisoners as props, camera subjects, background atmosphere for great television. Johnny Cash saw them as his audience, and in about 7 minutes, that difference in perspective will destroy Collins' entire empire. This was supposed to be Collins' masterpiece. 3 years of planning, every camera angle calculated, every shot designed for maximum ratings. Collins had one rule: the artist follows the producer's vision. Always. The Folsom Prison recording was his obsession. He'd convinced the California Department of Corrections to allow cameras inside a maximum security prison. He'd negotiated with Columbia Records. He'd assembled the best crew in the business. Collins had given specific orders about the prisoners. Get the dangerous-looking ones in frame. The ones who look like they might snap. That's our rating gold. Glenn looked too hopeful, too human. That didn't fit Collins' narrative. Every time Glenn shifted to see the stage better, a cameraman would step in front of him. Glenn Shirley has no idea that in exactly 47 minutes, Johnny Cash will perform his song in front of 243 inmates. But first, Johnny has to get past the man with the clipboard. Johnny Cash walked into Folsom Prison at 9:47 a.m. He was wearing all black, as always. His face was gaunt, showing the weight he'd lost during his own battles with addiction. His hands were steady, but his jaw was clenched. Collins approached him immediately. "Mr. Cash, wonderful to finally meet you. I'm Richard Collins, Granada Television. I'll be directing today's performance." Johnny shook his hand, didn't smile. "I've prepared a staging diagram. Collins continued, pulling out his clipboard. Camera 1 will be stage left, so you'll need to favor that side during the opening numbers for Folsom Prison Blues. I need you positioned exactly. Where are the prisoners sitting? Johnny interrupted. Collins blinked. I'm sorry? The prisoners. Where are they? Oh, they're arranged in the cafeteria. Rows of tables. My crew has positioned them for optimal. I want to see them. Collins' smile tightened. Mr. Cash, we have a very precise schedule. The warden only gave us 4 hours inside the prison. Every minute counts. If you could just review the staging notes. Johnny walked past him toward the cafeteria. What Johnny sees in that cafeteria will force him to make a choice. And that choice will cost him $200,000. But it will cost Collins everything. The cafeteria was packed. 243 inmates sat at bolted-down tables. Collins' crew had arranged lighting rigs that cast dramatic shadows across the prisoners' faces. It looked like a movie set. Johnny stood in the doorway, scanning the room. He saw Glenn Shirley in the third row, blocked by a cameraman's equipment case. Who arranged the seating? Johnny asked. Collins appeared behind him. My team did. Based on security recommendations and visual composition, the more threatening-looking inmates are in the front for dramatic, move the cameras. Collins laughed. Actually, laughed. Mr. Cash, these camera positions took 6 hours to set up. We have union crews, FAA regulations for the equipment, and a shot list that's been approved by both Granada and Columbia Records. We can't just move the cameras. The temperature in the room dropped. Other crew members stopped what they were doing. This is the moment, right here. Collins can back down, or he can try to intimidate Johnny Cash. He chooses intimidation. Bad move. Collins' face went red. Mr. Cash, I understand you're used to creative control in recording studios, but this is a television production. I've been doing this for 12 years. I've directed. I don't care who you've directed. Johnny's voice was quiet, but it carried. Those cameras are blocking the prisoners from seeing the stage. Move them, or I walk. Collins pulled himself up to his full height. He was 2 inches shorter than Johnny, but he tried to make up for it with posture. Mr. Cash, let me explain something to you. Granada Television has invested $1.2 million in this production. Your record label has invested another $500,000. If you walk, as you put it, you'll be in breach of contract. That's a $700,000 penalty, plus damages, plus the end of any future television opportunities. Do you understand what I'm saying? Johnny stared at him. So here's what's going to happen, Collins continued. You're going to review my staging notes. You're going to hit your marks. And we're going to create a television special that makes us both very wealthy. Or you can throw a tantrum, destroy your career, and prove that you're exactly the unstable addict everyone says you are. The silence lasted 5 seconds. Collins just threatened Johnny Cash with financial ruin and public humiliation. In exactly 30 seconds, he's going to find out what happens when you threaten a man who's already lost everything and found it again. Then Johnny turned to Collins's crew. Anyone who wants to keep working with me, move those cameras so the prisoners can see. For a moment, nobody moved. Collins stood there, clipboard in hand, face purple. $1.2 million, he said again. You're throwing away $1.2 million. Johnny walked over to the nearest camera rig, a massive Panavision setup worth $80,000. He put his hand on it. This camera, Johnny said, loud enough for everyone to hear, is between a man who's been locked in a cage for 8 years and the only music he's going to hear this decade. So either we move it, or I swear to God, I'll push it over myself. A cameraman named Pete Jenkins made the choice. He'd worked with Johnny before, on a smaller production in Nashville. He stepped forward. I'll move it, Pete said. You're fired. Collins snapped immediately. "Then fire me," Pete said, and started dismantling the rig. 2 other cameramen joined him. Then another. Then the sound engineer. Collins is shouting. Johnny is walking away. And what happens in the next 60 seconds will create the most iconic photograph in music history. Collins was shouting now. "You're all fired, every single one of you. I'll make sure none of you work in television again. Johnny walked to the stage, picked up his guitar, and plugged it in. The feedback echoed through the cafeteria. Every prisoner turned to look at him. Johnny played the opening notes of Folsom Prison Blues. The place erupted. Halfway through the concert, Johnny stopped between songs. "I want to do something special," he said to the prisoners. "A few months ago, a chaplain sent me a song written by one of you. A man sitting right here in this room. Glenn Shirley. Stand up." Glenn stood, shaking. Glenn wrote a song called Greystone Chapel. I learned it because it's one of the most honest songs I've ever heard. Glenn, this is for you. Johnny performed Glenn's song in front of 243 inmates, with cameras now positioned so Glenn was visible in frame. Glenn Shirley cried. And at that exact moment, photographer Jim Marshall captured something that would define an entire era. Something Collins would later try to take credit for and fail. At that exact moment, photographer Jim Marshall, who'd been given more freedom since Collins had lost control of the production, captured Johnny Cash, raising his middle finger toward the camera. Later, people would say Johnny was flipping off Collins. Others said it was the prison system. Some said it was the entire establishment. Johnny never said who it was for, but everyone who was there knew. The concert ended. Johnny left. And then reality hit Collins like a freight train, because Granada Television's board was about to review the production reports, and they were going to see everything. The footage from Folsom Prison aired 6 months later. It became the fastest-selling country album in history, over 3 million copies in the first year. It revived Johnny Cash's career and made him a cultural icon. Richard Collins tried to take credit. He did interviews claiming the raw, authentic approach was his vision all along. But the industry knew the truth. Granada Television's board reviewed the production reports. They saw that Collins had nearly destroyed the entire project. They saw that the crew had mutinied. They saw that Johnny Cash had directed the shoot himself after Collins lost control. Collins was reassigned to smaller productions within 8 months. 2 years later, he was pushed out of Granada entirely. He sued for wrongful termination and lost. Court documents showed he'd created a hostile and inflexible environment that had jeopardized multiple projects. He never produced another major television special. By 1972, Collins was working as a consultant for local TV stations in Manchester. His $2.4 million net worth had dwindled to less than $200,000 after legal fees and failed investments trying to recapture past glory. He died in 1989, largely forgotten by the industry he'd once dominated. Glenn Shirley was paroled in 1971. Johnny Cash hired him as part of his road crew and helped him record his own album. In a 1974 interview with Rolling Stone, Glenn said, "Johnny Cash looked at me that day in Folsom like I was a human being, not a convict, not a number, not a camera prop. Just a man who wrote a song. Nobody in 8 years had looked at me like that." Glenn struggled with life outside prison and tragically took his own life in 1978. But for those 7 years, Johnny gave him dignity. The song Greystone Chapel is still performed today. Every time someone plays it, they're keeping Glenn Shirley's voice alive. Johnny Cash lost $200,000 walking away from Granada's terms that day. He paid penalties. He burned bridges with British television. He risked his entire comeback. But what he gained was something Richard Collins could never understand. He gained the respect of every person who's ever been told to follow orders that go against their conscience. He proved that some things, human dignity, artistic integrity, basic decency, are worth more than any contract. And he showed that the powerful only stay powerful until someone refuses to be controlled. That photograph of Johnny Cash's middle finger. It sold for $75,000 at auction in 2010. Every music documentary about the 1,960 seconds includes it. It's been on t-shirts, posters, and album covers for over 50 years. Richard Collins' name appears in the credits of the Folsom Prison album in small print. Production coordinator. Johnny Cash's name is in history books. The difference between them wasn't talent. It wasn't connections. It wasn't even money. It was the willingness to lose everything for something that mattered more. Johnny Cash walked into that prison with a choice: protect his career or protect his audience. He chose the audience, and that choice echoes every single time someone stands up to power and says, "No, not like this. Not on my watch." That's not just a career moment. That's immortality. If you were in Johnny Cash's place, would you protect your career or protect your conscience?